talk about grip. And for me, I use the power grip. And a couple of things that I notice when I'm teaching people to use a power grip is one of the common problems they have is they put their index finger underneath the rim and they have a problem to hold on to it and grip lock it. Or they have a problem, they try to do a power grip and they put their fingers directly up and down. What a lot of people don't notice is my fingers are slightly slanted. So the disc will come out of my hand and it's not just the claw holding on to the middle, holding on to the bottom of the disc.
You mean it's not like a chicken leg?
You don't want to grab onto it like a chicken leg. Thanks though. How do you grip it?
I personally, a somewhat of a feather slash power grip. I still have all my fingers on the actual rim, but they're all, just like Will said, slanted. I find it easier to get a good spin on my disc, and I find it easier to let it go on time. Because when I end up having a full-on power grip, I do grip lock it a little bit. So for me, it's definitely easier. It's more comfortable in my hand. And really a key part in me throwing my drives is really my thumb. I try to keep my thumb, if you pull your thumb from the middle out, right where it gets stiff, that's where you want to put your thumb. For me at least, I find that it works really well. If you have your thumb too far in, it's going to be pretty hard to let it go on time. Same thing with if you have it too far out, you're going to drop it too soon.
Yeah, that's good. The thumb is a really key part because it's going to keep the front of your disc down. A lot of really common problem I see with people, especially who are beginning, they have a problem with getting the front of the disc up. Raise your hand if you had that problem when you started. If you didn't raise your hand, you are probably lying. Everybody had that problem. And what I do is I try to teach people, hold the disc out like you're imaginary holding a disc. You can even do this with me. If you're going to teach a beginner, and then you're going to look down your forearm, and when you look down your forearm, you want your thumb to be almost completely flat when you're holding a disc. A lot of people think you hold a disc just like you're going to shake somebody's hand, but if you put a disc in your hand just like that, it's going to be straight up. So when the disc comes out of my hand, the air is going to hit the bottom of it, it's going to go straight up into the air. But if you're thinking, throw it down, keep the front of this down, and my way of describing it is like a plane taking off is like this. You want your plane to be in mid-flight. That's how I explain to keep your wrist down. I don't know if you have any tricks.
Well, I keep telling myself thumb down, thumb down, thumb down. Every time you throw up, you're gonna, 90% of the time, it's because of this issue with your thumb. So just constantly think about keeping your thumb down. Also, keeping it down doesn't mean that you have to angle it down. Because like Will said, it's a flat line, and how high you throw your disc is going to be the angle of your arm rather than your wrist. So that's really a good key, because you might find it hard when you're thinking thumb down. Like I said, you're going to find yourself throwing down in the beginning. All you have to do is angle your arm. Honestly, you might have some really good input on that one, but I just try to imagine when I angle my disc, I move. This is always still, really, and I will move my whole arm rather than my hand.
Yeah, you want your body to match the angle that you're trying to throw. So if I'm trying to throw a big Anheuser, I'm not trying to run up at the same exact way and think, okay, well, if I hold my wrist here, it's going to be an Anheuser. I'm really going to have the same exact wrist position, but tilt my body backwards, and then I'm pulling across my body to where I'm going.
And through this, your thumb never really, sometimes you want to move a little bit, but I mean, your thumb is pretty much always the same angle.
Yeah.
And that's really where you get all your spin and the how you deal with wind and how you deal. The thumb is really not a key factor at all in throwing a disc.
No, you want to be able to have it really consistent, nice and down. The next thing that I want to talk about is reach back, and to go back onto the obvious question, who started with the fastest disc that they could find at the store?
In my case, it was a pretty pink.
Yeah.
And that's why I got it.
Or
it was a destroyer.
Or some face of an animal on it or something. But getting that really overstapled disc, something that you did not need, pretty much ruined your form for the next couple of years. Because you get to a point to where you learn that disc is going to go left no matter how you throw it, and it's only going to go 80 or 90 feet. But then you learn if you can lean backwards and throw it this way, that it's going to flex out. And then when you get a putter or mid-range, you're going to learn that you can't necessarily do that anymore. It's just going to roll, and you think that those discs are useless. But really, you need to learn with the putter and the mid-range, something a little bit less stable, and learn to release it with a slight hyzer. And just like we were talking about with the thumb, you want to make sure that your thumb is coming through and it's not coming over. I see a lot of people who have that problem. They go to the shorter courses and they can't throw the putter, they can't throw the mid-range because they're coming through their body and then rolling it over because they're used to throwing that really overstable disc when they first started out. So how many people started out with one of those really overstable discs? Does anybody have problems with throwing putters? A couple people. James says no way, not me.
Well, I mean, it's a lot. Obviously, everyone likes to throw far, and I'm pretty sure, without raising hands, I'm thinking we're a majority.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you don't have the technique, you're never gonna get over that second distance. You'll throw a decent distance, but if you don't have the basic technique for a putter and a mid-range, you're never gonna get over that 400 feet line.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be very inconsistent. So it's worth, stepping back a little bit and throwing shorter, but consistent and like you should, rather than you're great at open courses because you can land anywhere, and then someone takes you into the woods.
I get a lot of questions about people saying that they can throw a fairway just as far as they can a distance driver, or they can throw a mid-range just as far as they can a distance driver. And that's because of the form. When it's coming out of your hand, you want to have a nice clean release. Otherwise, when it comes out of your hand like a butterfly, and it has a lot of off-axis rotation, or it's flying through the air like this, or if it's flying through the air like this, it's not going to be as fast as it can. You want to have a nice clean release, so as soon as the disc comes out of your hand, it's nice and smooth. So the next thing that we'll talk about is reach back, and a really
Is that the same forehand backhand?
Yes, forehand and backhand. And I'm glad you brought up the forehand thing, because I see a lot of people who really think they need the most overstable disc possible to throw forehand. And if you watch Jeremy Colling, you watch people who have the best sidearms in the world, they are not throwing really overstable discs at all. He hardly ever throws an X1 sidearm. He hardly ever throws an H1 sidearm. He does if it needs to go hard right, but he's throwing the M4, he's throwing a fairway driver, he's throwing something nice and smooth, and he's keeping his palm to the sky. He's not trying to come through and rip it over this way, because that's not the most accurate shot. The most accurate shot is going to be nice and smooth with a little bit of hyzer, and then come straight up and go straight.
Well, what would cause the flutter on the forehand?
The flutter is your wrist. And a lot of people have a problem because they either played baseball or they did something of throwing this way. So they're used to be coming over the top, or if they come through, they're used to be coming this way. And with the backhand, it's a lot easier because your hand can stay right there the entire time. But if you're going sidearm, you have to keep your palm almost completely to the sky to keep it nice and smooth. Next time you see Big Germ throw a sidearm, ask him to just stare at his palm. Don't even look where his disc goes, because you can tell if he turned it over or if he threw it straight to the right because of where his palm is pointing, or his thumb. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up though, because I see a lot of people who try to start out with really overstable disc sidearm, and then they just try to yank it over, and then flex it out. I did the same thing. Back to reach back. I think Ragna has a really good example of a straight reach back, and what I want to do actually is line up create a line that goes straight back. That's not very straight back. But if you guys can kind of rotate this way a little bit so you can see straight down from where we're going to throw.
Pretty decent straight line.
That's not bad. I don't really do that. So what I'm going to show you guys, this goes along the same lines of starting out with the right disc. When you guys start out with that really overstable disc, you're used to reaching back, and then when you come through, you're trying to come this way. But really the hardest thing to teach when I'm doing lessons or I'm doing clinics is getting a straight reach back and then pulling it through on the same line. I have people who reach back and have a problem to come around their body, and as soon as you come around your body, you have no choice but to come around in a circle as well, which takes you off of this perfect line. So whatever you're going to do on this side of your body, you're going to mirror coming through. If I'm trying to keep on this straight line, if I reach back this way, I can't come straight through because that would be going straight through my body. If I reach back and I'm going here, I'm going to be coming through like this. One tip that I tell my girlfriend, and she'll probably hate me for telling you this, but I tell her, keep your disc at if you have a problem reaching back and your disc is too high, try to keep your disc right at your hip the entire way you're running up. Because as soon as you're lined up, your hips and your shoulders are going to be where that's pointing you in the right direction. So if your disc is sitting right here, you can't go like this. Whoops. You're going to be really noticing where your reach back is going to be. And lower is better than being high. So next time you're out on the field and you're thinking, I really need to work on my reach back, put your disc right here. When you run up, think, just stay right there, nice and slow. All you're going to do is nice and easy the whole way. Go ahead, throw one. Or say something.
I know.
I don't want to talk a lot.
Well, my trick to keeping it on a straight line, my dad was my coach, and he always thought of plank, the size of your disc. And the plank lays just under your chest. And you need to pull the disc on this plank. It's a very imaginary plank, but it works. And every time I throw, I try to think about this plank because they're not bent, they're not circular, they're straight. Same thing like he said, if you're on the plank, you can't swing it, you can't go up, you can't go down, and it's just right here, and then you keep it on there. Just like he said, just don't overdo it, just take it nice and slow, and go back.
And the people right here you can see going right down the line, she's not reaching back and coming around, or she's not reaching back and staying away from her body. She's staying within a few inches of those discs all the way through.
And it keeps you balanced. A lot of times I'm sure you've kind of like half fallen off a T-pad or stumbled over one or even fallen over pretty much. But when I've done it, and you know what's wrong. For example, if you find yourself throwing straight up in the air, you have too long of a last step, you probably pulled it all the way from here. It's really logical. So if you actually film yourself and look, and you can see it, just like he said, how you pulled it and what angle you pulled it at is going to be a direct reflection of where your disc is flying. So technically it's kind of simple, right? But it's still pretty hard.
Simple but really hard.
So yeah, just take it easy. And just go straight.
Yeah, balance is a really key aspect into anything. When it's putting or driving into any shot, I really try to take my time. If I'm throwing a standstill shot, which I do a lot of the time in the woods, whether I throw sidearm or backhand, I'm really making sure that, for me, I like to keep my feet a little bit wider than shoulder length, and I really try to make sure to use my legs and stay balanced. I see a lot of people have a problem who get to the end of the tee pad and their feet are about this far apart, and they go like this, or they don't have any type of body weight going into their shot because there's no difference in weight shift right here. Even if you're too wide, there's no difference in weight shift in doing this. But if you're standing there and you're a little bit wider than shoulder length, you can tell that there's a difference in going from left to right. Especially when you're running up and you're really focusing on that last half of a second of throwing, that body shift is really going to be coming into major effect. Does anybody have questions on reaching back? Yeah.
I have a problem with the upper.
A lot of times when I have an issue with throwing high and up is because I don't put down my last step before I start pulling. So if you're still seeking balance while you're pulling, you're gonna end up like this, and then you're gonna throw straight up. So it's really important to have that balance, that you have a decent last step that's kind of the same size or distance as your previous steps, just to keep that balance going with you. Put your foot down and then go. Obviously it happens a lot faster. Yes. Well, yeah, you need to have your foot planted when you actually do the actual twist, because
Not
if you
to mention that longer step will put your hips in motion to.
Yeah, I think one way that it will really help you out is when you're following through or you're pulling through, focus on where your hand is going to be at. Because if you're up here, another thing that I told my girlfriend, which she's gonna kill me, but
don't tell her, this is what happens here, Stacey.
Yeah, try to keep your hand below your shoulder line. So when you're coming through, really focus on keeping your hand here. So when you're coming through, if your hand is coming up, you know that it's going to be a higher shot. Now, if you're throwing, of course, a high right to left shot, your hand is going to be coming straight up. But if you're throwing straight across, if you're throwing into this net, my hand is always going to be below my shoulder. It's not going to be coming up. Even on like an open distance shot, if I was going to play hole 1 right here, it would probably slightly come above my shoulder. But it's pretty rare where you see any professional come through and pull their hand way up, unless it's a really high shot.
I know the position I'm supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to throw
To that
one more?
position is-
Look at his last foot. Look at when he puts down his last foot and when he starts doing his actual lineup.
Does that mean you want me to throw it?
Yeah, you throw. You're so much better. See how he plants it firmly, then he uses the explosiveness. Because
Yeah.
if he didn't have that foot down, it wouldn't look that good.
Yeah.
There was a compliment.
This shot.
A good way to
to his girlfriend.
a good way to work on that also is almost acting like you're like a pitcher. And what I mean by that is you're going to keep 2 feet together or even on 1 foot, and then really focus on hitting that last step and then pulling through at the same time. It's almost just another step above standing still. And it's working on your weight shift as well. So if you're out in the field, you could just stand there like this and then almost just push off into it. I slipped a little. Does that make sense? That's a good way to practice what she was talking about.
My dad, or I practiced with, all he was standing next to me and he said, foot, foot, every time it was too far. It gets kind of annoying after a while and you stop. So get one of those.
Now, is that the same thing for a forehand shot as well? The same thing where you're getting that, planting the foot before you...
Yes, yeah, for forehand you really want to be able to, say it's the same exact thing. So when you're coming through, you really want to hit and plant, and when you plant, the back foot is actually pushing off and you're shifting your hips into your front. So to talk more about weight shift is you want to be able to have all that power back here. And one of the common problems that everybody's had is they lean forward with the shoulder, and as soon as this leg is straight up and down and your head is over your foot, you have 0 power at all. If you go and you watch baseball players hit a home run, their head is all the way back, and when they hit that ball, all of that power is forward here, and then they're extending into it. So for a pro disc golfer, if they're coming through, all of that weight is back here, and then their hips are out in front, and then the disc is going to be out in front, and then their head and shoulders follow through. So a lot of people have a problem with coming through, and then they're like this, leaning over their disc, and then it's going to be an air bounce coming out. So one thing that I work with a lot of people on is getting their hips out before the rest of their body. And that's just a timing aspect of it.
And if you, I don't know if you played other sports too. I try to compare it to other sports that I've played. I did martial arts, and I try to think you can't ever get power if you're not grounded and balanced, and it's the exact same thing. Like you can't throw a punch if you're in the air. You just have to be planted and balanced in all aspects to get the maximum power out of it.
Yeah. Does anybody else have a question?
I got one.
Yep.
All right, so I get the whole weight shift thing, but when you guys are pulling back, now are you guys, you get the full reach back? Sometimes I tend to want to look high and pull through, but when I do that, I'm overturning a lot of times.
Right.
But I seem to get more distance that way.
Yeah.
But some people are look down like a baseball player and then pull through like that.
Yeah, the trick is really you want to have almost like a white space that you look into, because when I look back, I'm not reaching back and looking at what's right here.
Okay.
I don't even know that I do this and look back.
Right.
Somebody tried when I first started. Somebody tried to tell me to not look back and look away from my target.
Right.
And then the few times that I even tried it, you can't reach back if you don't get your eye off the target. So really, it comes up to lining up your shot, lining your feet and your shoulders to where you're actually, you have a lot of faith in your shot and your release point, because it's not about what you visually see. It's all about how you feel it. It's all about your release point. It's all about lining up your shoulders to where you're going to hit that shot. You can close your eyes and hit that shot. So that has a lot to do with it. And it's once you start focusing on that, when you start looking back and you start to see stuff, that's when you need to stop playing for a month or something.
Right.
Because you're going to notice it every single time. It's one of those small things that's like you can't not look at it. And as soon as you focus on something else, you're not even going to remember where your release point was or anything.
Right. Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, I get you. Because I mean, it goes so fast, but I am turning. I don't really see it, but I do notice. But I've seen people where they're looking down, but for me, I get more of an extension
Well,
back.
have you ever stood on like a balcony and you've looked up and you feel like you lose balance? It's
Yeah.
the same thing. If you have a focus and then you take that focus off of it on something else, you're no longer lined up.
Right.
Because it's just like any other type of balance. If you remove focus for 1 second, then you lost the original.
Does anybody else have a question about something else? Yeah.
It's, one thing I'm struggling with right now is trying to get a good hand.
Okay.
It's like, how do what do you do to get it out and go to the right on a backhand?
One thing that helps a lot is body position. And body position, I mean by that is you want to lean. If you're trying to throw Anheisers all the time, you're really going to be leaning back. Instead of standing here and trying to turn it over, it's a lot easier to lean back and then have the same exact form. Because if I lean over here, like my regular form can come through, and I lean back like that, it's going to be almost the same exact pull through. I'm not trying to bend my wrist a certain way or anything like that. Sometimes to trick yourself to throw Anheisers is just to get a really understable disc and just learn how it flips and learn how to get it to go 200 or 300 feet and then turn over.
I try to imagine painting a rainbow. It works. It does work. Because a lot of times when you try to Anheuser, you actually never come back down in the end. You actually just throw straight up. So one of the key parts for me in learning a good Anheuser was to actually do the full rainbow. It does sound silly, and I know men can't talk about stuff like that, but it works. So
that's a good idea. That's really true, because I see a lot of people who come through, and what I try to teach people is you want to make sure you finish your shot always. And a lot of people come through and they throw an Anheuser and they just go like this, and all of a sudden it's nose up in the air and then it goes back to the left. But if you come through and you really push the nose angle down, you can turn over any disc you want.
all the way to the pot of gold.
All the way to the pot of gold. Does anybody else have a question on what we just talked about? So,
doesn't it make you happy though to think about rainbows? It makes me happy.
So one more thing I want to talk about before we're done is tempo, and I see a lot of people who don't understand the timing aspect of it, or they try too hard. And one thing that I tell everybody that I come across is always slow down and always try to find the exact tempo that you're trying to throw at. I see people who are trying to throw really hard and they run up as fast as they can, track star, and then they rip into it and then they fall over themselves, and then they're not as accurate as they should be. So next time you're on the tee pad and you're trying to build or get better, try to slow yourself down and really focus on getting that perfect reach back and then pulling through, because that's what's going to give you the most amount of distance.
Start slow.
Yeah, exactly. You'll see a lot of pro players who are trying to throw really far. They aren't necessarily running like a track star as fast as they can down the tee pad to throw far. They're getting it nice and gentle, and then when it comes to throwing far, that's when they go to that 100%. They're not starting back here going 100% and then getting into nothing and falling over themselves. They're starting nice and slow and then building into it.
20 miles per hour.
Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions on driving at all? Not one question at all?
You're primarily, obviously, back here.
Yeah.
Where does this transition beforehand when you're talking about tempo? You
Tempo
see
is the
people
same
that do
exact thing.
everything from running all the way up to just standing and
Tempo to forehand compared to backhand, I would say is the same exact thing. You always want to be balanced the entire way you're running up.
Balance before you
Yes,
go.
yes. You always want to be balanced. Every step you go through, you always want to be balanced. And the best way to explain it is a shortstop throwing to first base. And I actually changed my entire run-up for sidearm because of one of my friends in Nashville who used to be he was a baseball pitcher, but he threw submarine. Yeah, submarine. So he would come this way, and then he'd get his hips out in front, and then you would come through just like he would pitch. So his tempo was just like that, like he was picking up a baseball and then throwing it. And he can throw sidearm 550 probably. But just nice and smooth. You don't see him running up and then like getting into it really hard or anything. Does that answer it?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
I mean, you see the difference between people that will stand here and just flip, and you see
Yeah.
people that really swing it around.
Mhm.
It's basically the same thing as the backhand, where instead
Yep.
of coming around, you're actually reaching the bone.
Yeah. With sidearm, you really want it. Yeah, same thing. You want to keep it on the same line the whole way. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of the same thing with what we were talking about the thumb and starting with putters and mid ranges. That if you can't handle it slow, then you're not going to be better by running. So you have to start slow and get really good at it, and then you can increase your tempo. But the moment you feel like you lose balance, you have to kind of take it back a little bit.
Yeah. Sorry. I put 2 fingers underneath. And a common, to talk about sidearm real quick, a common problem I see when people try to grip it is they try to grip the middle of the disc. Like they try to hold it from here and throw it. But really, my palm, my pad of my finger is on the inside rim. So you're not throwing it, you're not throwing this part of it. You're trying to throw it that way. Does that make sense? Okay. Did you have a question?
I had a couple questions. On your grip there, are you stacking the fingers or are you putting both fingertips
Yeah.
on the grip?
Yeah, I'm just
Or on
stacking
the
them.
rim, I mean.
Yeah. No, I'm not putting them like this.
Right, yeah.
No. I'm just I'm stacking them like that, if that.
Well, is there one correct way to do it versus the other?
There's not one correct grip.
I've seen other ones use with both fingertips on the rim.
Yeah, there's not one correct grip for backhand or forehand
Right.
at all. I mean, if it works for you, then it works for you.
And as far as the forearm shot, you kind of talked about the elbow position as you come through.
Yeah, and it's-
close to the body, out from the body.
Yeah, you don't want to be. It's the same thing for backhand. For backhand, I'm trying to keep it not as close as I can, but I'm leading with my elbow. For sidearm, it's not as close as I can, and I'm not being out here, but I'm leading with the elbow into the mat.
But you can get too close, maybe. Don't have
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could if you really tried to keep it close,
Right.
but it'd probably be hard to do that. You would notice really quick. You probably hit yourself.
When you hit your ribs.
Yeah,
that's
when you hit
too
your rib,
close.
you'll know.
Yes.
Somebody else have a question?
On your backhand, are you pulling through down here or up here?
That's a good point to ask. Body position is something that we kind of talked about a little bit, but more for Anheuser. When you're throwing straight or you're throwing a Heiser shot, I see a lot of people are standing there just straight up and down. And if you go watch any professional athlete do their respective sport, nobody's standing there like this. They're not standing there and hitting a baseball. So when you throw a disc, you want to be able to bend your knees and you want to be over your toes, nose over toes. So you're over your disc and you're actually limiting yourself so you can only be right here. A lot of people have a problem with trying to pull across their chest, which is where you do not want to be at all. But if you're leaning over your toes, you can't be up here. Otherwise, you're taking yourself out.
Which you'll notice pretty quick.
I've seen a couple.
Yes, I do. It's the same, like you said, with balance. I try to imagine that if someone were to push me, I wouldn't just fall straight over. It's the same thing with any sport. You need balance, you need to be able to move and flexible. Same thing with martial arts. I kind of think you want to be able to get someone to punch you in the gut. If you're like this, you're pretty weak, and if you're like this, you're strong.
Yeah, if you're just standing there here and you're in your last second of you throwing and you're just right here, you're probably not going to throw very far. But if your knees are low and you're over your body here, you're going to be throwing the maximum you could. Yeah, you don't want to think of extending your arm the whole time. I mean, you see a lot of people who even reach back, and as long as your arm, and I tell a lot of people if they have a problem with reaching back, tense your arm up. I know I have really big muscles, but you really want to tense your arm up when you're reaching back and get to the position where you're using all of your arm. Because a lot of people are just sitting here. If you're sitting right here, you're not going to use all of your arm muscles. But if you're reaching back, you really can extend them and then really get a long time to pull it through.
When you do reach back, just remember that you're actually not like, you're using your back to come back around. So try to imagine when you do go far back, imagine here, it starts right here. It doesn't start here. So everything comes from a package deal, you know. You move your whole body together to be powerful.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, earlier you were talking about not trying to use your wrist to step up, but as far as flex shots and analyzers,
Yeah.
that transition to the full back and how you're doing it.
Sorry, give me your question.
Yeah, like for flex shots and
Yes.
analyzers, are you just angling your back more
Yes.
or just your wrist?
Yes, yeah, you're trying, yeah, you don't want to really change your wrist too much.
Okay.
You do a little bit with Anheuser's just to get the front of the nose down, but you really want to work your body position more.
Do you keep it just as close to your chest on Anheuser?
Yeah, yeah.
The farther out, I know I have a lot of metaphors, but it does help me. Have you ever sat in an office chair and you spin and you put your legs out and it slows down, you put your legs in and it
Like a
speeds
ballerina.
up? Like a ballerina. I'm just not like that, but office chairs. Same thing with your arms. If you keep everything tight, it's going to be faster and more explosive. The more things you have messing around out in a circle, the slower it's going to get, the less balance. So just try to keep everything tight. If you do look at a lot of videos of pros playing, you'll see that their left arm is down tight. I know that one or two has their arm up. I can't do that. It doesn't work for me at all.
Yeah, gravity's not in your favor when you're like this.
Right.
When you're spinning around, you can stand there like this and you can feel your arm is not
Right.
helping you pull through. But I have this thing where I have like my left hand goes in this weird position. But anytime I reach back, it just goes away.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you tuck your left arm and then make sure that you pull it through, because that's the fastest you're going to be is right there. If your arm is out here, you're not very quick like this. Nobody tries to run around like this. They try to run around
Sprinters are like this.
right here.
And if you want to try it out, find an office chair, tuck your legs out, you'll get it real fast. Any other questions?
Somebody
Yeah.
somebody told me to put it in your pocket.
Yeah.
You got a way to
Back pocket is
back
good.
pocket, back pocket.
Yeah. That's good. Any other questions?
It's already going.
Release point is kind of a funny thing because I think it's a misconception about release point. People think that you release the disc when you reach it out right here, but really your disc is coming out about at your front leg. If you watch really slow motion video, you'll see that the disc is not coming out here, because if disc was coming out here, it would end up over there. That's why a lot of people have a problem with grip locking. But when you come through, getting super technical about it, you're building all of the power from back here and coming through. And as soon as it gets on the line that it needs to go, it has to release. It has to be let go. So if I was going to reach back and I was going to grab Ragna and throw her, I was going to grab her. I'm not going to get to my extension and then be like, okay, go. I'm going to grab her, and then about right here, I'm going to let go, and then gravity is going to be pulling it away from me.
And the movement continues, like the power comes out of you and it continues. It doesn't stop, like you said, it doesn't stop here. That's why you see a lot of, you need to really follow through.
Yeah.
If you actually stop your arm, it's more like you're letting go of it rather than it, like you said, getting ripped out of your hand. So also to continue all the way around, the power continues forward.